Good day, my friends. Toby-Wan Shinobi here, and today's and shields before your enemies even touch the ground. Gone are the days of 50-50 fights for weapons and quick trips back to the lobby. Let's get into it. Alright, let's get some quick general information about drop spots out of the way to help you make better informed decisions. Generally speaking, a centrally located drop spot is optimal because you'll have plenty of time to loot and fight other enemies without having to worry about the oncoming storm. Now let's talk about POI populations. Generally speaking, the first 20% of the bus path is usually not very busy, even if it's typically a busy POI. This is because most players only begin to look at the map once they're actually on the bus, and they miss a good jump for the first areas. The next 60% of the bus path is usually pretty crowded, and the last 20% is usually pretty empty as well. If a POI has a golden title on the map, it's even more likely to be a hot drop due to the extra loot from the drones that can be shot out of the sky. The most popular POIs in the current season are Brutal Bastion, Frenzy Fields, and Slappy Shores. If you want to know some very good drop spots that are central with excellent rotations and not contested, check out my best drop spots video after watching this one. Now, I recommend mastering about 3 total drop spots and learning each one at a time. Keep dropping at the same spot until you've got the optimal flight path and loot route down pat. All right, let's jump into bus drop calculations. This is a fun topic because it's actually a fairly complex science to get right, and there are many factors to take into account. The main factors to account for are bus speed, character speed, glider deploy height, elevation of the terrain, and distance to your landing. It takes some time to master, but that's great because that means this video is going to give you a big advantage to beating your enemies to any drop spot. And I'm going to try to make it really easy for you. Now, if you want to get a perfect drop every time without having to learn anything, you can use an online program called Copilot to find the perfect drop for your unique bus path and POI using a Fortnite API that calculates terrain height. Visit www.landingtutorial.com. Click on the exact desired landing spot, then drag the 2 ends of the bus path to match what you see in the pre-game lobby. You can reverse the bus path with the center swap icon. Then click the button that says Find Best Drop. It'll show you where to jump off the bus and then the exact point to dive straight down to land perfectly at your POI. This is a great tool for learning optimal drop factors or creating your own drop map. So that software is great and actually works very well, but I much prefer knowing how to calculate the perfect drop while in game, so that's what I'm going to teach you now. Let's cover some quick tips about speeding up your flight into the drop spot. First off, the bus is about 3 times as fast as your character when diving or gliding, so it's always best to use that speed to get close to the POI before jumping. Next up, diving with a slight pitch downwards is significantly faster than gliding, so you should always try to cover long distances while skydiving and not gliding. Gliding should only be used when you are low enough to get your perfect glide in. Check out this comparison between me and my wife on the mini-map. I am diving and she is gliding. Now that we know that gliding is so slow, we want to spend the least amount of time gliding as possible. Your glider automatically deploys at exactly 100 meters above any type of terrain or object, including underwater terrain. So if you aim for underwater terrain or deep canyons, you'll actually have less gliding time because you end up being lower than pulling your glider above normal terrain that is above sea level. So you should almost always aim for low points to reduce your glide time. Another fun fact is that if you were to automatically pull your glider at 100 meters high on flat land, you'd be able to glide for about 300 meters until you land. 300 meters is just short of the width of Mega City. Keep that 300 meter distance in mind because we're going to work with it later. Now, while you're covering horizontal distances while diving, you need to pitch downwards at about 10 degrees, otherwise you'll actually be slower than a glider. Look below the horizon while diving until you hear the wind flapping noise kick in, and then you're moving at an optimal speed. Shown here is an example of what not to do when diving horizontally. You need to be looking below the horizon and not above it. And if you didn't know, the fastest way to any point is in a straight line. Therefore, you should always do as little amount of zigzagging or looking around as possible until you actually have your glider out. You want to hold a perfect forward movement without any angle on your controller or your keyboard. Okay, now that we've we've covered optimal speed and height, let's break down the perfect drop. The very first thing you want to do is look at your map when you're on the pregame island with other players. Observe the bus path and pick your drop spot. Now look for what you think is the lowest point on the map within about a 300-meter radius of your drop spot, and it's also on the path into the POI. Mark it with a pin, and now that is your glider pull point. Again, just as a reference, 300 meters is about the width of Mega City. Now that point that you've marked, your glider pull pin, is roughly what you're aiming for, and you'll make corrections as you get closer to it. Now once you're on the bus, exit your map and start looking at the POI you're trying to land at, as well as your glider pull pin. Double check that it looks like a low elevation and the right distance out. If it doesn't, go back into your map and mark a different spot that has a lower elevation or that's just a better spot. If you find a really low elevation like a canyon or water, your glider pull point should be a bit closer to the POI. If the spot you're actually landing at is high up, you also need to shorten the glider pull distance. This is kind of an art that you'll have to figure out with experience. Now that you've got your glider pull point marked, you need to decide when to jump. You want to jump a couple of seconds before the bus is perpendicular to your glider pull point. This is going to give you the optimal travel time to beat other players. A lot of people think you should jump when you're exactly perpendicular to your point, but that's actually going to add more flight time, and that's not good. Now aim yourself at a straight line in the correct trajectory to arrive above your glider pull marker when your chute pulls. Remember, your glider will pull when you're exactly 100 meters above the pin. You can make minor corrections on your way in and aim for different points if you begin reading the terrain better as you approach. Additionally, you have a call-out marker that can be used for quick distance measurements as you're flying in or to tell teammates where you're landing, etc. Now, a quick note, if the bus path is closer than 300 meters or about the width of Mega City to your POI, then you're going to want to mark a glider pull point that's about a 300-meter radius from the POI landing, and then you want to jump out of the bus about a couple seconds before reaching that 300-meter radius. Then just dive straight down until your glider automatically deploys. Now, I know I just threw a lot of information at you and it can be kind of confusing. What I encourage you to do is go onto landingtutorial.com and start dropping pins on POIs you like to land at. Then drag the bus route around and find the best glider pull point. Keep changing the bus route around and try out different POIs as well. Use this as a reference to all the key points I talked about earlier, and maybe it'll begin to make more sense. Notice the flight angles, the glider pull distance, the elevation it chooses, etc. Playing with this tool can really give you an idea about what an optimal glider drop looks like and can save you a ton of time while learning in the game. Okay, finally, I want to end with some bonus information to give you the most success once you hit the ground after a drop. First of all, you should always be scouting for close range weaponry and preferably shotguns as you approach your landing. This is because if someone lands right next to you, you want to have the optimal weapon for a close range fight. You should also do a really quick scan for other gliders as you approach your landing to get an idea of where enemies are dropping. Next up, you should only start fights right after touching the ground if you really need to, meaning if you don't eliminate the player landing, they're going to be a big problem for you in the next 30 seconds. Otherwise, you should forget about anyone else approaching and immediately go find more weapons and shields. You should absolutely make getting shielded up a priority before taking your first fight. This is a mistake I used to make all the time. I wouldn't grab shields and I'd get in fights and I'd wonder why I died. The more shields you can get, the better, but aim for at least 50 shields. Once you've got a decent loadout, you can start clearing your area. If you followed all the flight steps earlier, or you're using landingtutorial.com, you should have been the first person to land in the area, which also means you should be the first person to have shields and good weapons, and you should use that to your advantage. Focus on enemies in your immediate vicinity first. You want to create a safe space to loot up and scout for other enemies. Once you've got enough loot, you can start moving from building to building. Do this methodically and never be out in the open for very long unless you know you've cleared the whole POI. Once you've checked all the buildings and you're confident that the POI is clear, you can grab a bounty board or capture the zone flag to get extra loot or find your next opponent. You should also take a look at your map and see where you need to move to next. Try to plan your route using a vehicle, jump pads, or rift statues to rotate to a new location inside the next circle, or one that has an advantage and can cut players off trying to get to zone. Or you can look for vault bosses spawning in or combat caches to get better weapons and guaranteed slurp juices, which are extremely powerful. I hope this video helps you out. If it did, please consider giving it a like. It helps me out more than you realize. If you're new here and you like this, then then I bet you're going to love my other content. Check out my must-watch playlist on my channel page for more in-depth guides focused on zero build. If you like what you see, then smash that subscribe button and gently click the notification bell. I also live stream every Tuesday and Friday from 12:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Feel free to jump in and ask any questions you might have, and I'll answer them live on stream. Thank you so much for watching. Have yourself a great day. Shinobi out.